the music in the background? What do you think? Get rid of it? No, no one likes the music. No one likes it. Just get rid of it. So we have guests from all of our different centers and coming from all the different locations. And what we're going to do today, there's a couple of topics, but the most important topic I think I'd like to address is this concept called the death hormone, cortisol, and effect on the human body, and how we could identify it for what it is, and then most importantly, address it. And it's like this hidden time bomb that's basically killing America. This whole concept of, you can argue it's the American lifestyle, it might be a Western culture, it might be just modern man, but the way we have evolved has come so far from our actual nature, and the rate we have done it, we can't even evolve quick enough. So like our technology, our lifestyle, everything is moving so quickly that evolution isn't keeping up. Now, there's an argument, however, that evolution doesn't go slowly, it actually jumps quickly. You know what I mean? Okay, but I don't see it happening right now. So we're all just kind of tripping. We're not jumping over anything. And so let's look at this. And basically, as a species, stress and trauma, we have like mechanisms within the autonomic nervous systems, the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, fight, flight, like restore, or survive, kind of, a system all set up quite elegantly. And it's used to be a little bit more black and white, where there's a tiger in the village, and you do something, and you drop into, and you dump your adrenaline, and you go, and you survive, or you run, whatever you've got to do, or you're just kind of chill. And what's happened in our lifestyle is we're right in the middle. We're in this constant and perpetual state of fight and flight. It's just constant information, constant overload, constant stress, where we never really get a chance to drop down and recover. We never really get a chance to restore and regulate. Our chemicals regulate our body. And we're in this, it's kind of like, okay, in the winter, if you have, or in this case, in the summer, if you have a home and your air conditioning isn't that good, and it's 116 out, so the air conditioner never turns off, right? And sooner or later it's going to blow, because you can't get to the point where you reach the homeostasis, where you reach that balanced state where poof, okay. No, it's not. You're always on. You're always looking from left to right. You always have this sense that something's going to happen, or you have to make something happen. And that's kind of our modern information age, the modern world. So we're no longer being killed off by tigers in the village or Vikings, right? Thank you, all you Swedes. And that's not happening anymore, but it's more like a slow burn predator. You turn on the you put on your iPhone, it's congratulations, you've won. Like, I didn't even win anything. What am I doing here? You're always being preyed upon, which is actually a human karma. We have ascended basically being prey of the animals. And once you're no longer prey, you become your own predator. And so now we prey on each other. And you'll see it. We see it, constantly. Exploit friends and family first. The Ferengi rule of business. That's a little Star Wars. Anyways, for you Trekkies out there. But that's what we do. We basically consume each other. And that puts you in a position where you're basically surrounded by your predators. And so you never get a chance to just stop dumping these stress hormones. Because it works really good if I've got a situation where I actually either have to fight or flight, the necessary chemicals dump. And I stop, my digestion slows down, my oxygen intake picks up, it's all delivered to the muscles. I'm ready to go. All of it, the hormones for procreation, everything drops, everything slows down, and everything goes into the front. Let's survive. But if you stay in a state like that, the adrenaline state, after a while, you get into where the cortisol kicks in. And after a while, if you stay into that state long enough, it's no longer regulated. And so you've basically got a situation where the chemicals in your brain are poisoning you from the inside out. And it shows up and it manifests in our, cancer, inflammation, chronic pain, all of these, we can go on and on and on. But if you look at most of our chronic disease, stress related. And, and then of course it expresses itself in usually inflammation in one way or one part of the body or another. And there you go. And so, okay, what do we do? At the end of the day, how do you address not being in a situation where you're going through this chronic stress and accelerating aging? Because that's really what's happening. The average American biologically is 7 to 9 years older than they are chronologically. And so if you're 50, well, you're 59. You're running around in a 59-year-old body. And it actually starts to accelerate and accelerate. So how do you stop it? You can say, well, let's exercise. We're going to just exercise. Well, that's really good, and it will start to deal with some of the effects, but the real cause is in between your ears. The real cause is your mind and how your mind is responding to the reality that we live in. Now it becomes a little bit more of a holistic view. And basically what we have found, you have to address it on 3 different levels. Yes, you have to kind of definitely move, exercise. We call that Jing, J-I-N-G, moving the body to basically remove the effects. It's not really, in most cases, preventing them, it's removing the effects. Because the actual cause is right here. It's how you think, ultimately, that's being expressed in your body. But you have to move. And in moving, yes, we could basically move the lymphatic system and increase circulation and do all of the physiological things necessary. But it gets deeper than that. On an energetic level, as you move, you also start to remove a thing called cellular memory. Because all of these stress events that have happened in our life, they're not just like in your memory, they're actually in your physical body, in your cellular memory. So a lot of the movement that we go through, healing sounds and all of these different postures and 8 vessels and deep standing postures are burning away this cellular memory. Because if we look at, this induced stress comes from, okay, there is a tiger in the room, but really there isn't. So usually it comes from worrying about a tiger possibly being in the room or remembering when the tiger was in the room. So the problem is we have a memory and an imagination. And that creates now, not only are you just dealing with the tiger in the village, but the tiger's long gone, but you loop the tiger in the village. And you keep remembering basically at the end of the day, your story. The tiger in the village might be your boss that you don't like, or the time you went bankrupt, or the time she left you, or the time your kids, and it's here. And it keeps playing over and over and over again. But your brain doesn't know the difference. So it's going to release the same stress hormones as the day it happened. So you keep poisoning yourself with your memory, or you poison yourself with your projections. That's what we do as a human being. The future creates this anxiety. The past creates depression. And usually the moment, right, like right now, unless I'm really engaging and entertaining and highly, keeping you informed, you'll float. You resist the moment. You'll want to look at that Facebook page or something. It's like, you got to. It's the candy. And so we resist now. We basically worry about tomorrow and we lament yesterday. That is the human condition. And what that is really a disease of the mind. We've become predominantly mind-dominated creatures. And the reason I'm bringing up all of this, kind of sounds negative, is there's a very simple and elegant solution. So it's not like, and you're all screwed. See you next week, and just send you on your way. So that's not the case. But this is just really kind of looking at, well, what's causing this? You know, when we're really young, it's not as bad because you don't have as much story and as much responsibility. So you'll notice you get more of now. Have you noticed how you remember how long a day took and how wonderful it was just to go to the park? You know, if you walk, I have a 4-year-old. If you walk down the street with a 4-year-old, everything's exciting. Even a piece of gum on the floor. It's like, oh, is this, what is this, a bean? And he finds the eye. Everything is just a dream. Where we're like, yeah, it's a bean, whatever. You know, because we're late. Where the guy didn't call me back. And how about this contract? And so the little child, the innocent child, is in the moment, and we're in the future. We're basically lamenting the past and truly resisting now. I got to get home now. Put that down. I got to get home now. I got to call this guy. Right? And that's what happens. So the quality of now is gone. And all you're doing is dealing with depression and anxiety and resistance. And that's pretty much how we roll. And then what happens is how vibrant the day is gone. It's just not as exciting. It's not as fulfilling, you know, that meal, that trip to your, you know, relative, whatever you're doing, it doesn't hit you or basically sedate you in the same way it did when our minds were open and not filled with all of these chemicals. And that's basically a disease of the mind. And the only way we could basically survive this disease or cope with this disease or treat this disease is to understand that you're not your mind, you're not your thoughts, and that your mind was supposed to be a tool. Like we don't have big claws and big teeth, you know, we don't, but we have this big fat brain. So we figured out how to make fire and a spear. And at one point, our brain was our greatest asset. And now we're at like a tipping point where it's probably our biggest enemy, the human mind. And because there's one fatal flaw with the average brain, it has no off button. You just don't have an off button. A great analogy is like this. So here I am, I'm doing the lecture, and we're all, oh, wow, this guy's interesting. But throughout the lecture, I'm doing this, and I'm just flapping my arm around. And so anyways, and you're like, what the hell's happening with this guy? And I'm going, and so I told the people we should all show up. They're like, wow, freaky. You do that with your brain. Your brain's flipping all over the place. And you think it's okay. If any other part of your body flipped all over the place or moved recklessly without your intent or control, you'd know you'd have an affliction. Right? But because it's tucked away in your skull, you think no one knows. But after a while, it expresses itself in your face. It expresses itself in, how about this person? Everybody in my family does this. Their knee bounces. That's the, you know, hot-headed Italian, my knees bouncing thing. I used to do it all the time. I'd have to sit there this whole time like this. Yeah. And so when I lived with my teacher, he was a very kind and loving man. And so what he would do is reach over and grab the inside of my thigh and pinch it so hard that it would bleed. Like he took a vice grip and he'd go, "Hook, watch your mind." What did he do? After about a year of that, because it didn't just go away. I didn't get it. I had like all kinds of these welts on the inside of my thigh because I lived with him and he saw, oh, that's your mind moving and it's expressing itself in your leg. You see it? So that's kind of a disease. And you can be like, you know, there's nature and nurture. So you can say I was taught that, probably, but also I was kind of born that way. And, you know, I just posted a meme on my little Facebook thing. It's like, you knew I was Italian when I married you, and now you say I'm loud. It's like, this is what I am, you know, this is how I came in. We're all loud. And so, okay, that's fine, but you have a certain amount of genetic, but there's also your nurturing. So I had the double whammy of excessive yang genetics and excessive yang culture and behavior. And so what that does is basically create excessiveness. It's usually not the equation for success, or at least long-term success. You'll succeed, but then blow up. So that was open expression of the mind that doesn't stop moving. And you might know people like that. And so, but I was lucky enough to have a kind and compassionate teacher that guided me through that process. Yeah. Yeah, but you guess what? That level of yang needs to be met with more yang. You got to fight fire with an atom bomb at that level. So if you talk to me about, your knees bouncing and it's really negative, and we need to really get in touch with the calm, it wouldn't work. I wouldn't hear him because my knee would be bouncing too quickly. And so as that knee is bouncing, you're dumping stress hormones, and your brain is moving a gajillion miles an hour. People bite their nails. It's another one. They light another cigarette. In our case, we're on, so what was on the, what's this? But what is that? That's this limb flopping all over the place, and we think it's okay. But if you physically moved a part of your body around as recklessly and unconsciously as you do your own mind, you'd know you had an affliction, and you'd probably want to deal with it. Maybe not. Maybe if everyone's doing it, we're thinking, oh, that's what we do. Maybe, right? It's possible, So, okay, what that is where as long as the mind is moving, there is no now. And if we really want to look at like our deepest impulse, really, as a little creature, we really want to enjoy now. Like we want to have the experience of now is life. Like you're only living now. You're not truly living in the past. You're reliving the past. That guy who was the starting quarterback in college, sitting there on his 14th beer at the bar, talking about that game that he won, and they all loved him and carried him out of the field, and he's been dead for 20 years. That's a ghost. You don't have to be, by the way, you don't have to be dead to be a ghost. That's another one of our greeting cards here at Zen Wellness. Because just because your consciousness is not in the moment, that's a ghost. That's in the past. Right? You got to really understand this. It's almost creepy. And also with projecting, well, one day, no, my life is going to be good when this happens. You're a ghost. You're not now. You're not really alive. And more than anything, you can call it your soul, Atman, whatever you want to call it, Elvis, whatever word you have for that indwelling consciousness, it wants to be alive. And the life is only found now, like in the moment, like now, not thinking about yesterday, not tomorrow. How do you bring something into the now? When you're a child, it's almost free. It's constant. Your story isn't as big, and you don't have all of the stuff dragging you down. So if you remember, like even, Christmas or thanks, all these little silly holidays, or your first camping trip, or the first fish you caught, or whatever nonsense, you can smell the water, feel the sun. It was alive. The campfire, you smell it in the background. You were so alive, but really you were so now. You can replace the word alive with now. And the absence of now is really what's kind of killing us. And so what we have found is there's an equation in which you could drop into the now. There's many systems. It's not just, and it's the Zen Wellness system. It's not. It's a very old system. We are just trying to make it so the average person can access and understand it. But it's a very old formula. And the first step is move the body. By moving the physical body, A, we start to address the effects. But B, we didn't stop the mind, but we focus the mind. Because there's a lot of people that want to go straight for the candy and stop the mind. And if you're not developed and you just sit on your mat to stop the mind for 2 days, you'll probably go nuts. You won't do it because you didn't develop A, the nervous system, B, the physical body. Most of us aren't even strong enough, sounds weird, but truly strong enough physically to sit there with no motion long enough to stop the mind. The amount of pain your back would go through, that's why flying in an airplane is hell. They keep making the seats smaller and closer. And so it's like a Chinese torture. And not, why is it hell? If you were to actually just sit in the thing and not move at all, it wouldn't matter. You don't really need space. The reason you need such a big chair and so much, because you got to move, because your body is basically killing you. And what's really the pain is the lack of circulation. We know that of blood, yeah, but it's also chi, the energy running through the body starts to basically get cut off, and you're in pain. So if we were to say, we're going to sit and quiet the mind, you would sit and torture yourself. So you would go the opposite way. Now, maybe properly motivated, you'd break through it. Like we can create a stress moment where there's a guy with a spear on your chest and saying you're sitting there. You might do it or not, but that's a tough way. And maybe 1 out of 1,000 would pull it off. So what we have found is, no, let's get rid of the weakness. Let's make sure there's ample flow of blood, of course, and chi, so that the body is capable of, holding this one space. Moreover, the work it's going to take to get rid of this, to move the body, is now I can't think about later or the past. I tell people all the time, this is what I do. Okay, everybody, feet shoulder width apart, bend your knees slightly, and they don't even see their body. Their feet are out, knees are slightly bent, shoulders low. It's a room full of Quasimodo. And it's like, what the hell? These are your feet. So they can't even put their mind into their body. It's easier for me to see 30 people and correct their posture in my mind in a second than them just to correct their own foot. It's a weird thing, I've come to accept it. Used to make me nuts, and I'd lament. I lived with my grandmaster, and I'd come home. I said, but it's horrible. No one gets it. They're idiots. I think they're just being mean to me. They can't be this bad. It can't be this bad. And he would say, listen, if they knew what they were doing, you wouldn't have a position. It's call it job security. You understand? And I was like, it was a moment. It was like a clear moment. I was like, wow, you're right. So yeah. Okay. So the mind can't be anywhere but in the body in order to do the asana, the tai chi, the qigong, because it's got to be aligned. So now all of a sudden, in order, this whole tomorrow, yesterday, this, that, it's all over the place. No. I got to bring it right here. Create the one point. So really, it is a form of moving meditation. You think you're training your body, but you're really training your mind, because what your body is doing is only a reflection of your mind. Does that make any sense? The body's just a lump. It's the mind, it's the nervous system telling the body what to do. And the strength of that information and the clarity of that information is basically brought on like a laser. And that's why you'll notice as we train, even the complexity of these things. It's not just do this, but we're going to turn, we're going to do that, we're going to draw, it's very complex. It's done for a reason, to kind of draw more focus and concentration into it's a funny thing. The hardest thing for you to really pay attention to is your pinky toe. Right? Who's really thinking about their pinky toe, right? You're not. Oh, yeah, I have a pinky toe. So we put all this weird focus on death begins or atrophy begins in the extremities. We wind up being these mind-dominated creatures. So we take care of our face, but we rot. Our guts, our legs, everything's blown out. Ooh, nice facial. But what the rest of you is dying in front of me. And so, because we're mind dominated, you can kind of see it, And so the physical movement brings your mind into your body. The body's a detail, almost a tool. Then concurrently, yes, you reverse the effects of this premature aging brought on by a deluge of these stress and death hormones. Constantly look at the brain. We'll talk about that. We'll move our way up. But we're just looking at how the body is rotting. And stress, fat, is the hardest fat to get rid of, by the way. And so it's like, okay, we need to get a hold of the stress. And the way we're going to fix the mind is with the body. You can't fix the mind with the mind. And my teacher used to tell me that all the time. And I remember he would say, you can, drop into the moment first with the body. You actually have to focus the mind through the body. And I couldn't get it. I remember one night following him around, asking him over and over and over again. It's 2 a.m. and I asked him the same question probably 20 different ways. So he turned around and he kicked me right in the chest. I swear to God. And I flew through the kitchen. My ass went right into the drywall, and I slid down the wall. And he said, did you find now? Because my body was traumatized. I mean, that's a tough way to do it, but he got me there. And we all know that. You get in a car accident, any physical trauma, time slows down. So he tried to explain it, but I was probably one of his worst apprentices, you know. He never even called me Marco. My name was Michael, Marco, forever, 18 years. Never got my name right. But so I was like, really? So, but you see the point, how there's a teaching there. And so I'm not going to kick you through the wall. I'd like to, some of you sometimes, but it's the movement of just standing there in the horse stance, right? Because as it burns, it gets harder for your mind to wander when you're standing in that warrior stance for your third moment, fifth moment, when you're doing 8 vessels for 5 minutes of posture. It's just you and that moment. So there's a power there. You can't discuss mental. You've got to take them through it. You fix the mind with the body. So I thought, okay, yeah, obviously. Now, this was back in the 80s. And I've spent years now, decades, looking at this in the field and watching it actually work. Very important piece. Now, we say, okay, moving practice coordinates the mind. Standing practice, what the standing practice does is burn the nervous system. It overrides the nervous system. Basically, you know how they treat tennis elbow? So if you have tennis elbow and you go in and you have the orthopedic surgeon treat it, it's a small incision. They take a scalpel and they just scrape the tendon. They just scrape it a little bit and then they sew it up. And what does that do? It creates enough trauma for the immune system to jump up high enough to fix it. Because you're in this state where it's inflamed, the air conditioning is running constantly, but it's not cool enough. You don't have enough juice, if you will, localized to treat that. The older we get, the less repair crew we have. And so it's like you'll get these chronic disease or chronic condition. So they basically heighten the trauma, localize it, and then everything runs and fixes it. Does this kind of make sense? When we stand, there's muscles. We know this. There's a fascial plane. I think we're just starting to really study the fascial plane in the human body. Early days of anatomy, they just remove it so they can get at the good stuff. When in fact, that's where all the meridians and the major wiring is. Oops. And so there's also a thing called vessels in the body, your deepest energetic structure. We teach all of this in the energetic anatomy and physiology. Key vessel is called a thrusting vessel, and it really is a big piece of your nervous system. So in standing, you're basically burning chongmai, burning the thrusting vessel. In other words, building your mental capacity to override the body's physical urges. Because it's like I'm going to train the body by coordinating it, and that's cool, but also I'm going to discipline the body by making it stay still. And what happens is if you stand long enough, you'll notice there's this wonderful burning that starts to happen. And that's a few things. One, we're not used to sending the same message, and sending it. We're just grab the apple, grab the piece of paper. Just a quick, short, sharp, it's a low message. Not a lot of information for not an extended period of time. When you're standing, it's the same damn constant message. So what's happening is a way to look at it when we look at the nervous system as it is affected by the standing in the spinal column itself, spinal cord. Maybe it's like an aluminum speaker wire. That's what you have. And you're trying to run 220 through it. That's, and so you might even have the intention of the mind, but the nervous system isn't there. So how the hell do you burn and build the nervous system? And that's where the standing practice comes from. Now you're starting to burn the nervous system so it has the capacity to hold that will and intent of the mind to move this body for the extended period of time. So we're going from moving practices, teaching us to coordinate and focus in the moment, of course, reversing a lot of these physiological issues we've acquired over the years. But then it's like, well, why was that? Well, I see the actual conduit from the intention of mind to the body is atrophied or maybe never developed. So the standing practice helps us build the ability to manifest yi, or our mind intent. Is this making any sense? So we move, we stand, and finally we can sit. The seated practice. So now, if I got rid of all this nervous energy, right? I burnt out all this muscle memory, because when you're sitting down, right, and if you close your eyes long enough, you're going to have like a pop-up on your forehead screen. It's kind of like ping, ping, buy now. All these little things pop up. And there's like, well, where the hell did that come from? Well, it's usually stored in your muscle memory. It's karma, experiences and activities that are stuck to you. So you think you're just chilling, and all of a sudden, bang, Uncle Frank never loved me. Boom, all this weird crap comes out. Where's that coming out? It's in you. And until you burn it out of you, it's going to keep popping up into the forehead screen as stored or unresolved story. Which, by the way, it'd be great to get rid of all of that before you drop dead. Now, you can believe in what you believe, but God forbid your consciousness does go on after death. Read this. Has anyone heard this book called Biocentrism? Really good. And it's the latest study, how they figured out a while ago that electric, you know what I mean, is electric, and it never, what do they call it? The electric, pardon me? There's a thing, yeah, it's a conservation or whatever. Electric doesn't go away. It just changes that which it occupies. It doesn't go away, okay? So does consciousness. So they have all these high-tech equations and studies they've been doing. It's like, well, the consciousness is even a much more refined. It's kind of like, you know how we have the internet, but you need a phone and Wi-Fi. But that information's all out there. It's right here in this room. But if you don't have the device and the batteries, the information isn't going to activate. Your body is nothing more than a device, and your energy is nothing more than a battery, a battery that picks up this broadcast, which we call consciousness. Interesting. So if you're into it, look at it. You can say it's, God too. I prefer the Roman Catholic thing, but whatever, it all fits. It all fits fine. So when we look at all of this, you say, all right, well, here's the mind. I'm trying to sit here and enjoy now. I'm being plagued because I didn't move. So my body's in chronic physical pain. I didn't stand. So I don't really have the discipline, the nervous system to really sit long enough to create this tranquility. Where there's tranquility, there's clarity, and pop, now I drop into now. That's when you're truly alive. And then you start to get a sense of the fragrance, if you will, of now. You get used to it. It becomes a familiar state of being, and you can bring that into work, into home, into daily life. You can bring now with you. It's hard to bring something with you if you can't find it. So we move, get rid of, make the body kind of work. We stand, so we have the discipline, the nervous system, and then we start to sit. And we have to basically leverage, the fact that we moved and we stood long enough to parlay that into enough time. Because some of us, the better you get at it, the easier it is to find it again. It's like once you find your phone, you can go back and get it all the time. But the first time you're trying to find this tool in the garage, it's hell. So there's an initiation process and a preparatorial, experience needed. Then after a while, there's two camps now. There's one camp is, no, that's bullshit, just sit. I get it, but 1 out of 1,000 will make it. I believe 1 out of 100 can make it if you move, stand, then sit. Your chances go up. So there's two camps, the Chan camp, the Zen camp, and the Taoist camp, inner alchemy camp. I'm more dealing with people all the time. If I just said, guys, welcome to Zen Wellness, shut the hell up and sit. And that's what we did. Every time I met, we just sat. There'd be no one, me and my dog in the room, and I don't even have a dog. So you see it? You're not going to do it. So the baby steps are taking control of what's going on with the brain, and it creates this chemical reaction running through the whole body that then starts this unholy momentum. It's literally a chemical addiction. And it's really your thought, your mind movement, that flopping arm. We get addicted to it. And so you have to break its pattern. I get addicted to it too. So I'm not sitting there talking but not me. I'm the pious, enlightened one. I'm not. However, I do have a shot at deliberately dropping into when I know I'm really, really, getting too far away from my center. I have an equation in which I can get back. I do have the combination to the safe. Yeah. And I'm not saying the safe place. Okay. No safe places. The safe place is here. It's not what someone says or a society provides. Uh, so can you find tranquility in complete chaos? That's where Zen came from. The Bushido code found the only way they would be able to live in a combat where everyone has a 3-foot razor blade is you better be able to come to complete tranquility in chaos, horror, and death, or no way you're making off that field. And they would do the tea ceremony, and they would do all their Zen practices so that they can stand in the face of death without any freak or panic or stress hormone. And so then we're like, wow, we found that the hard way, because there are 2 ways to find now, by the way. One is cultivation. It's not free. It takes time and discipline and effort. But the other is free, and it's fast, and it's called trauma. Trauma will bring you into the now. That's why my teacher kicked me into the wall. So how about now? Get it? And I'm like, okay, trauma. And usually the lower your IQ, the more trauma you need. And that's why I got kicked into the wall. He's dealing with a monkey. And that's okay. I was just a kid, So it's either trauma or cultivation. But the problem is a lot of times you get the moment from that trauma, but not the lesson. So then you even associate now with trauma, and you start running away from now. That's where your PTSD and all of that. It's like the last thing I need is to get into my head because it's a hell story. So I'm going to keep gambling, keep dancing, keep moving, keep partying, keep drinking, keep whatever the hell I'm doing, keep dancing until I'm dead. Because if I stop, there's a story here that I can't handle. And that's unfortunately what happens sometimes when you get to that now through trauma. So, and we've all found now, every one of you. My teacher told me before death, every human being gets 3 opportunities to find the moment. 3 opportunity means 3 horrific moments. He made it sound really nice, but there's 3 moments when time stops. We've all had them. If you think about it, 3 times in your life, especially if you're, some of you have been here longer than 50 years, where it's gone bad. And they've even done studies on that, where they took it's like a panel that had digital numbers going really quick. And they told the guys, okay, read them. And they couldn't. And they pushed them out on a plane for the first time as parachute. Now read them. They were able to read them. Time slowed down. Yeah. So the mind does change during trauma. And so, but that's a tough way to get there. But that's where sometimes you'll get addicted to adrenaline, because you get into now. If anybody, I did full contact fighting when I was a boy for a long time. And you get addicted to the blood and the smell and the heart rate and the uncertainty and the rage. And there's nothing in the world, nothing but you and that dude you're pummeling. And it's an unhealthy way to get there. And it's certainly not the secret to longevity. We've got a lot of missing teeth and broken bones still. So, but it is a way to get in, but it's not a way to stay in. People do it too has anybody gone so you can go to South America and do ayahuasca, or you can do DMT. These are mind-altering drugs that bring you into now, and I've done all this stuff. You can do peyote. You can do all these different mind-altering drugs that will get you there or introduce you there. But the problem is, it's like you've been blindfolded and brought to this destination, so the destination exists. They take the blindfolds off. Now you go home, but you have no idea how to get there on your own. So then the only way you can get there is through these mind-altering ceremonies. Does this make any sense? So then it becomes a recreational drug at that point, as opposed to initiation of the nature of mind and the true potential of now. That's really what that's supposed to be for. But of course, we upgrade it to become a recreation. So what we want to do is say, yeah, okay, that's fun to know it's there, because I don't have a lot of faith. I'm not a faithful person. I know when you look at me in the room, you're like, wow, he looks like he's filled with a lot of love and faith. I'm not. Okay, I wish I was, but I'm just not. So, but so I don't believe, but I do know you can find a process. So this isn't a promise, it's a process. Very important. And what do you mean? Well, can it be reproduced over and over again? Is it an actual equation, or was it a fluke, or was it brought on by something outside of me? So what I have kind of committed myself to is like, okay, well, that does exist. Oh, that's kind of cool, but kind of wacky. I don't know if that's going to be a long-term plan. How can you get to tranquility and clarity, drop into the true nature of your mind with an equation, a process? And that is the whole concept of standing first, as we talked about, or pardon me, moving, standing, and then sitting to create tranquility and clarity. During those moments, a tremendous amount of repair will happen too. See, your brain moves really quickly, right? They talk about the different gamma and alpha and beta, all the different ways. So you have these two big, puffy, things of cotton in your head, and they're all, the more you think, the puffier they get, if you will. I know how about this for, anatomy. And so, you spend your whole life with this big puffy head squeezing up into your skull, when in theory, the frequency is supposed to drop slow enough for the brain to decrease in size up to 10% at night. And then the cerebral spinal fluid bathes the brain, bathing off, beta amyloid. It's a plaque. But we don't. We just have this big inflamed puffy brain for decades. And we wonder why we suffer all kinds of neurological disease. That never-ending flow of cortisol, death hormone, and there's 40 other, by the way, chemicals that run through your body that basically cause Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cancer. We can go on and on and on, okay? Depending upon your physical constitution. So you can say, this is a poison. What makes it so complex is the same poison reacts differently to every one of us. So it's hard to realize it's not a bunch of different diseases. It's really one disease. What do you mean? Well, we all have a different constitution. So based on your elemental constitution, or as they would say, your dosha, or whatever language you want to use, if you have a metal face, a metal constitution, it's probably going to affect your large intestine, probably going to affect your lungs, probably going to externally affect your skin. If you have an earth constitution, it's going to affect your pancreas, your stomach, your spleen. If you have a wood constitution, it's going to affect your liver, your gallbladder, your connective tissue. If you have a fire constitution, it's going to affect your heart, your small intestine. You see it, but it's the same poison, but what did you put it in? So a big part of what we do is we kind of help you say, hey, you know what? This is your constitution. And we try to help you understand your anatomy type. So you'll realize how that poison or how disease in general will affect you, because it's going to affect you based on the equipment you're using. The equipment you're using is simply your body. And so a lot of times you might think it's different disease, but really it's not. Same disease, responding different to different constitutions. So our goal is to start basically introducing you to a skillful means in which you can take the mind and say, okay, all right, I'm not, over here now. I'm now here. My feet are straight. My knees are bent. My tailbone's moving. I'm breathing with my motion. Oh, wow, this is touching my wrist. It's just a moment in the day where your brain is finally in your body. The longer, they've improved it, the longer your mind is not sending information to the different parts of your body, cells of your body, they self-destruct. They just start to break down. Oh, I'm not needed. They basically retire. We're supposed to bring our consciousness to every part of the body. And that's why I always take our clients, even the beginners, okay, everyone, this is what we're going to do. We're going to get our feet warm, our hands pink. They don't even know. I know what I'm trying to do, but if I tried to explain it to them, A, they'd think I'm nuts. B, they wouldn't pay attention. But I know, Yi, Qi, Li, the mind has to lead the energy, yeah, to the furthest points. In order to get the furthest points, it has to pass every point. So if my intention is to run this consciousness through this meridian, the light body, yeah, why not just bring it all the way to the ends? Then I know it passed the ankles, the knees, the hips, the wrists, the elbows, the shoulders, and all the internal organs, and the mid, lower, and upper back. So it's just bring it to the extremities. So that's the movement. Then the standing is get the burn. A lot of them at the beginning can't stand. So we do stand on a boat. I might do a little of this, try. But if I said, let's stand, guys, they'd quit. It takes 24 months of moving before you can get somebody who's really suffered a lifetime of neglect to stand, for about 5 minutes without them just, really quitting. And so then, God forbid, sit. We can get them to sit and turn off this lightning storm in their head. The body immediately goes into repair. Because while you're in that state, that allostatic load of cortisol, which drops in, the adrenal only goes for about a few minutes. And then you stay in this cortisol state because it wasn't resolved. It's like, shit, you fixed it. Oh, all right, good, got it. But it didn't fix it. So it's like you can't just stay like that. So now the cortisol kicks in. That after a while stops. Now you're in this unregulated state, and the internal organs start to respond to it. And we go decades like that. So to sit in this state where, wow, there is no fight, there is no flight, the body immediately gets busy fixing itself. And, what I have learned is the human body is amazing, because I see people walk through my door that are basically dead. Like, wow, really? Life does hang on because it wants to be here, it wants to experience. And they start moving. And after a while, year, 2 years in some cases, they're much stronger. There's not a lot of people that can say, I'm stronger at 72 than I was at 70. But we've got an army of them. That's how responsive and forgiving the human body is. It can take a lot of abuse. But if you could stop dumping the death hormones, and that's why we use the inner smile, start with the dopamine now. How about some happy, medicine? Start dumping the healing hormones and the right lifestyle. It's like just a drop of water and that tree will actually come back. And I was taught this too as a kid. But I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't believe it. I just want to learn the cool Bagua and all the moves. And I was always taught, you're taking a pill for a disease you will not get. And this is a gift of life for life. And this is, yeah, I know. But what about the double sword thing you showed me? So not until I was like 30 did I really start to realize, wow, you know what? This is kind of interesting. I'm still moving. I'm still feeling pretty good. Cool. I made myself better. But then once I started teaching, because I was primarily teaching martial arts, warrior, scholar, sage. That's what we do. Then I started teaching the medicine, and all of a sudden, I was shocked at how good it worked, because I never had to have it work on me. I never had to fix it. I never had gout or the knee or the stuff with the thing. Nothing. The only problems I had was because I was dumb enough to get in the ring. I created the problems myself. So that was trauma, not disease. And so to see, wow, this is amazing at the rate. And I can go story and story and story on these people that, are much stronger today. And you ask the average 70-year-old, make them an agreement. Listen, you're going to be stronger at 74 than 70. They'll tell you bullshit, because that's how we're programmed to believe. But the human body is designed to maintain a biological age of about 50, even if you're 90. Until death. And that's because nature won't allow you to walk around in a 3-point walker. There is no little chair to drive around collecting berries. You'll get consumed by a tiger. That's just how it was. So, nature isn't that stupid. We are. So, but if you treat the body naturally, it performs. I've had now a few grandmasters pass away. Now, I'm old enough that now my teachers are starting to die. And they lived every day until they died. They taught 3 lessons. They looked great. And then they died. Interesting. They call that a true Taoist immortal. An immortal isn't someone who lives forever. It's simply someone who lives every day until they die. They sit, they stand, they move. They're mentally, physically, and emotionally engaged, and they live that day, meaning they live that day. They're not stuck in the past. They're not worried about the future. They're not resisting now. They have moments of the old child, where they're actually childlike and have fun. And that's really what we stalk, just so that the consciousness could engage in this little rotting body and live every damn day. But we destroy ourselves. They call that a separation of Hun and Po, where the consciousness or inspiration of being alive is basically pulled away because the physical Po body is just rotting. You're just a blown out addict, and you don't have a moment of inner peace. And so we want to, but to restore that moment has a huge impact on you physiologically, energetically, and emotionally. And so the whole Zen wellness paradigm is the equation or process of moving, standing, and sitting in an effort to unite the body, the energy, and the consciousness to reverse, the effects of this chemical warfare that's going on. And I'm not even going to talk about what's being done to you. We're talking about what we're doing to ourselves. Then we could talk about, and then let's look at the fluoride in the water and, the microwaves in the air. And I know, I get it. So, but your ability to coexist is highly upgraded if your system is in a more, balanced manner. Because usually an unbalanced environment weeds out the weak first. So our first responsibility to ourselves and our family and then our community is to take care of yourself mentally, physically, and emotionally. And the way we do that is we move, we stand, we sit. That's how we regulate the chemicals, which basically create this chain reaction of poison. But it all actually does begin with the mind. But you can't go right into the mind. And there's all kinds of programs out there that are like, we can do this with the mind. That's cool. They're great. But you better have some type of physical modality to support that. You better have a way to truly build up the nervous system to, Miyamoto Musashi. Has anybody heard of him? The Book of Five Rings? Yeah. One of his famous quotes was, you don't swing a sword to cut flesh. You swing a sword to forge the will to adhere to your beliefs. What the hell does that even mean? In order to swing the sword properly, you have to sit, stand, and move a lot. You have to be accurate as a son of a gun. If you have that much mind, where you can just throw up a plum and cut it 8 times before it hits the ground, then you do have enough mind over matter to sit. And you do have enough mind over matter to adhere to your beliefs. You can have all of these great 10-step programs and religious things, and they're great. But if you really don't have the Chong Mai, the willpower, they're sources of guilt. Because now you know better. You'd be better off if you didn't know better. Because if you know better and you don't have the strength to adhere to what you believe, now it's even worse. It creates stress, guilt, and depression. So whatever your belief structure is, Wiccan, Hindi, Christian, I really don't care. It's only as good as your ability to adhere to it. So that's why we're not like whatever. It's so that you can run whatever belief structure you have successfully. So you have the strength and the discipline and the focus of mind to adhere to your beliefs. And that's really the main benefit. But if we're poisoning ourselves constantly through this constant mind motion, then, we fail right off the bat. You can have great things, but if you don't have if you don't have your mind and body, you have nothing. And that's what this whole, process is about. Okay, we've got a couple seconds. Does anyone have questions, comments, philosophies, or beliefs? Would you like me to expound upon something? Anyone? Yes. Yes. I'm experiencing one right now. No, God. No, God.
Where does that number or that average?
God loves 3. Now God meaning whatever you believe in. White beard, you know what I mean? Whatever. I think Elvis was God, personally. So go with where you want. But if you look at the universe, loves 3. Fibonacci curve. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Wrist, elbow, shoulder. 1 digit, 2 digit, 3 digit. lower, mid, upper back, 3, 3, 3. It's not a perfect number, but it is perfect. All form is imperfect. That's what allows infinite divisibility. Heaven is perfect. Therefore, it cannot be infinitely divided. It's just set. Boom, perfect intention. And then pop, drop into form, always slightly messed up. What makes you, you is your imperfection. And that's that. Otherwise, every blade of grass that's ever been on this planet is unique. That's a lot of grass. And what makes it unique? Imperfection. They all have their own little wacky imperfection. And so that's 3. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So you can look at that, sacred numerology and all that stuff too, if you're into it. So, yeah. So 3. You'll notice that too. Sit, stand, move. Foot, waist, arm. It's on T, right? Ankle, right? 3. It's always 3. Rules of 3. Rules of 3. I throw out more rules of 3. Always rules of 3. So, good. Good question. Any other questions? They're free. Nothing? Okay. What time do we go till? 10:15? Okay. So I'm going to make you sit here then for 15 minutes. No, I know that. I'm just rassy. All right. Well, then there you go. As we go through this process, some of you are here for the whole, experience. We'll go into detail on how to go through this, the sitting, the standing, and the moving practices. So welcome and good job. Yay.